welcome back to the podcast for the next episode here. I have a very, very good friend of mine, Mikkel Thorup. Mikkel and I go back quite a few years now. I think we met in Dubai 5 years ago or something like that, and developed a good friendship and really, spend quite a bit of time together. Here we are actually in Paraguay. We spent a little time in Brazil yesterday and looking at different things. As you know, I'm probably always shopping for a property, and Mikkel is doing a great tour here with his group. And we tagged along, Andrea and I tagged along, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been an awesome trip. I got to see a country, Paraguay, that I hadn't seen before, which is a little bit unusual for me in Latin America. I think I've now officially seen them all. But no, it's been great. I appreciate you inviting us, take us along, and we saw some great investment opportunities. And I'm always keeping my eye open for the next Veritas Village location too, right? So since we have Mikkel on the show, I wanted to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about what you do. But first of all, maybe you can, tell us who you are and what you do, and we'll start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And super happy to be here. And Pat, you're absolutely right. We've been here in Paraguay, we've been in Brazil this week, but we've also been to Ecuador together. We've been to Belize together. We've been to the UAE, to Dubai. We've been to the States together. So we've traveled and spoken on stage together side by side at multiple events. So it's been a lot of fun over the last 5-6 years to get to know you. And I'm super excited about the projects that you're working on. You're doing such amazing work.
Thank you.
And I'm such a big fan of what you're doing and what you're putting out there. So it's really, really excellent. As for myself, my name is Mikkel Thorup. I'm Canadian by birth, but I've been overseas for almost 25 years now. I've been to 110 countries. I've circumnavigated the globe over 400 times, and I've lived in 9 different countries. Oh. So I run a company, Expat Money, expatmoney.com, where I have a consulting firm. We help high net worth families move overseas. We deal with their immigration, their tax, their investment, the wealth protection, all of these types of things. And it's really a done with you service. And I'm side by side with my clients the entire step of the way. On top of that, we've got a newsletter, a podcast, a blog. We got webinars, membership sites, conferences, summits, tours like we're doing this week. So a whole bunch of different projects. I kind of joke that they diagnosed me with ADHD when I was a child, and it just
now you're making use of it.
Yeah, exactly. It just never ended, So yeah, that's just a little bit about me, but having a lot of fun and just really enjoying this work.
Well, I really appreciate you being here. I mean, I've learned an awful lot from you. I guess I'm the older one here, but you can learn from everybody. And I've learned, we do the freedom communities. We have our first certification or first philosophy, which is freedom, independence, resilience, sustainability, and transparency. I think our like-mindedness has a very large overlap on Venn diagrams, right? So, we're both libertarian. You're probably anarcho-capitalist. I'm still learning about some of those things, but I know philosophically how I feel about freedom and self-sustainability and all those sorts of things. So you said you traveled to 110 different countries, and now you're kind of centered in Latin America, and specifically Panama, where we're doing our next Veritas Village in Panama. What made you choose that region? And I get these questions all the time, and sometimes it's difficult to answer, but what made you choose the region and then specifically Panama?
Well, I lived in the South Pacific for 4 years. I lived in Asia for a while. I was in the Middle East for almost a decade, and I had originally traveled through Latin America back in 2003, 2004, and I hitchhiked and backpacked through the region for about 18 months and really had a fond memory of Panama. So when my family and I were in Abu Dhabi in the UAE, and we were looking for a new home because we didn't like the direction and what was happening over there, we started kind of looking around the world. And since I work in this industry, I'm familiar with so many different types of immigration programs and tax schemes and things like that. But this idea of Panama kept coming back to the top of the list. We'd make a bit of a matrix or a spreadsheet, and we'd compare the different countries. And Panama just kept rising to the top over and over and over again. So eventually we just pulled the trigger. I loaded up my family, got a shipping container, shipped everything I had to Panama. And we've been there successfully for 5 years now. And I'm making my application to be a citizen this year.
Awesome.
But I absolutely love Panama. It's a gorgeous country. So many good things going on there. So many large economic drivers. if freedom is what you're after, Panama is a really excellent place to be.
Yeah, and speaking of freedom and all the things that are going on in the world these days, I mean, tell us a little bit about how you've seen. I mean, we're both originally Canadian. Neither of us are Canadian residents anymore. A lot of the people on your trip this time were Canadian, from New Zealand and different parts of the U.S., Europe, different parts of the world. What are you seeing in the general trends in terms of what's going on politically in the world?
Well,
big question.
This is kind of a big question. Okay, let's start with Canada. I mean, I think that the behavior of the government there is absolutely despicable. I think that what they are doing to their own people, our own people, is unbelievable. I think it is a test case in totalitarianism. I think that they're rolling out a lot of these bad ideas in a place like Canada or New Zealand or Australia, and they're seeing how people react to them. The problem is they keep increasing taxes, which you really are feeding the enemy. You're feeding the opposition here, and they're using these tax dollars in extra surveillance and making up new laws and more bureaucracy, and they're just using these things against you. So a lot of my clients are just fed up. They're just absolutely done with the situation, and they want to move to somewhere that has a lot more freedom inherently in there. Now, is there chances that Latin America, that we can go down the same pathway? Yes, there is. I would say we're a good 30, 40 years behind, though.
Yeah.
And if I can get another good 30 years or 40 years of freedom, that sounds excellent to me,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and to me, it's like the Latin American lifestyle, and the culture is a live and let live sort of thing.
100%.
We create the Veritas Village, and within those gates, right? Nobody's going to come in and bother us, tell us to wear masks and stuff like that. It's just inside there. It's like your own little world. Whereas in, Australia, Canada, parts of Europe, that was not the case, right? I mean, they went into churches and were arresting preachers and stuff like that. So, it's a weird shift. I saw a map the other day, and I think I was talking to you about it, but the shift of, capitalism, libertarianism sort of switching from North America, Europe, down to South America and Central America, and the socialism going the other direction, right? It's like, I'm sure this is a pendulum swing, just like a lot of other things in the world are pendulum swings. You go conservative, and then the next government, a couple of years later, liberal, and goes back and forth. But it's interesting how the countries down in this region seem to have learned somewhat of a lesson, right? And go, well, look, we've been burnt by socialism a lot. We're going to go the other way. Whereas, you look at Canada and the law. Well, even this, what are your thoughts on this new proposed? I know it's not yet there, but the fact that it's even proposed the way it is scary. But the new hate speech law, where you can, rat on somebody from 20 years ago that they saw a post on their Facebook or something, and it's retroactive, and they get, the person that rats on you gets paid for it. It's just...
Yeah, they're calling it the Minority Report. So I don't know if you guys remember the movie, but basically, like, there is a possibility that maybe in the future you could commit a crime, therefore you were already guilty. Yeah. And these are the types of laws that they're implementing in Canada right now. Yeah. Like, this is some Orwellian book. Like, this is unbelievable.
Sometimes I wake up and think I was dreaming about it, but it's crazy. And the concept of paying somebody who can remain anonymous to report you, and then potentially get paid for doing that. I mean, you're incentivizing the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
You always have to look at incentives. Yeah, I mean, how things are structured.
Follow the money, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and so, I mean, we focus on Canada in the last few podcasts, so I don't want to beat up on Canada all the time, but it is kind of the poster.
To beat up on Trudeau, though.
That's all gloves off for beating up on Trudeau. I love the country, but I certainly don't love Trudeau or the current administration. And I don't really think, well, I'd like to get your opinion on this. I don't personally think that it really matters at this point in the U.S. if it's Trump or Biden, in Canada if it's Poilievre or Trudeau, and other countries the same. There's a certain amount of momentum and force that has gone towards creating socialism in those countries at this point, and elite takeover and everything. So what are your thoughts on, like, change of parties? What does that do?
I think it's just a downward spiral. I mean, let's switch to the U.S. Even if Trump gets in, and, there's so many people around the world who thinks that he's going to be the savior and he's going to fix anything. I think on the left, they're going to riot. It's going to be domestic terrorism. They're going to absolutely destroy things. And you might say, well, Mikkel, how could you say that? But this is what we just saw.
Yeah.
You know, Black Lives Matters and Antifa and things like this.
Burning down Chicago and
yeah, exactly. Lighting parking lots on fire and things like that. That's not peaceful protesting.
mostly peaceful. Right?
Oh yeah, like mostly. So, you know, I'm genuinely scared, and I have a lot of private clients who are genuinely scared what will happen with this divisiveness when it comes to a head in November.
Yeah, well, as you know, I used to be in the software business, right? So it was high tech, kind of Silicon Valley stuff. So a lot of my friends from 30 years ago are still in that industry. And I was talking to somebody about this. You know, like I think there's going to be a civil war in the U.S. Right? It almost doesn't matter which side gets in because you're going to have basically the North versus the South again to some degree. And he's like, no, well, that's possible, but we're already in a civil war. You know, it's a technology war, right? You've got the TikToks and the, you know, everybody is Twitter, X, whatever is all, you know, totally divided already. Like you cannot remain in the middle in the U.S. anymore, right? That's why I think a lot of people are coming down to like our Veritas villages. It's right. You get to sit with like-minded people. We can talk like this, and we don't have some radical leftists in our ears. And, you know, some purple-haired thing going off on us. But
well, it's a very good point. You know, on a lot of these tours that I do, I bring 10, 20, 30 people down to a country. And the number one comment I get from people is how amazing it is to spend time with people who like get it, who really understand what's going on. And there's a certain amount of short form, you know, shorthand when you're discussing with someone who is actually educated, who's not just listening to CNN and mainstream media all day, who have taken responsibility to do a bit of research on their own and understand these types of things. But to your point earlier about a civil war, they're already feeding into this. Hollywood is already making movies. They're trying to escalate the situation. There is no de-escalation here. There is no way to make amends. Like they have broken it. They've purposefully broken it, and they want to continue to break it. They've divided families. Husbands and wives are getting separated. Parents don't speak to their kids. Siblings don't talk to each other. You know, and it's just an absolute mess. But down in Latin America, it's always family first. So we don't have a lot of this type of stuff. There's not this woke ideology and cancel culture and the sexualization of children and transgender shit that's going through. You know, it just doesn't exist in Latin America.
No, I was just talking to Andrea, my wife, earlier, and she was saying the Latin American culture will, well, hopefully she's right, will never allow the government to educate their kids. And that's from the home, right? In terms of like, they don't get to, I mean, you can go to a public school, but the true education on how you feel about things is through the family. And the culture is great because they take care of their elders. Like there's no disrespect. I mean, you know, my wife could be mad at her father or whatever, but you would never see that. There's always that respect level that we used to have.
Sure.
4 decades ago, maybe in North America, but you know, that used to be there. And our parents grew up with that level, and that's still here. It's like time has stood still from that standpoint down here, which is great. I think it's, you know, and, you know, at Veritas in Panama and Coronado, to me, one of the things I love about that property is it reminds me of how I grew up, right? Go down to the stream, catch some minnows, trap some butterflies, put them in a jar or whatever, and all those sorts of things. And I'm looking forward to your expat school going to be there, right? And having that kind of mix of regular life. Like I grew up on the farm. We have the orchards and gardens at the community. So it'll be a great thing for getting educated without the woke side and having, you know, the ability to go on what we used to call field trips, right? Basically in your backyard there, and, you know, with the monkeys and everything hanging around. So I'm really excited about that because for our next generation, it's a totally different education.
Well, I think it's going to be the best of both worlds because, you know, both of our businesses, we have a lot to do with the internet, and I definitely believe in the sharing of information and the free exchange of information. But how amazing is it to live at a place like Veritas, where you have these incredible views and like mangoes from a mango tree that's 250 years old, and your kids can run around the neighborhood. But if you have a business back in the States or Canada, you can manage it remotely.
And what else? You pay no taxes.
Yeah. And a very nice bonus there, 0.0% taxes, which in my humble opinion is the correct amount of tax.
It's the right number. Unless they want to start paying you, zero is best. But yeah, no, I'm you know, Mikkel is on our board of directors for Eco Villages in our company. You know, we'll have a bunch of very interesting announcements soon too, but we did just get our permits for the creation of Veritas Village Coronado in Panama. So, if you're going to have a home there.
Yep.
We're going to be
absolutely.
neighbors there.
Yep. We've got houses side by side.
So it's going to be.
Our families are very, very close. They're very close with our kids. And, I absolutely sit on the board of directors. I'm also full disclosure, a minority shareholder in the company as well. So I put my money where my mouth is, not just in buying a home, but also investing in the company, because I think that there's massive upside potential in this company. I can see the trends that are happening in the world, and I try to position myself in front of those trends.
Well, and when you and I met, that was one of the catalysts that really got me thinking about, we're creating communities. I've been doing it for 2 decades or so, but I hadn't really seen anybody that had created a real freedom and, self-reliance, community reliance, independently oriented type of community. And a lot of what you were talking about is what got me going there. So, I'm very proud that, there might be a couple other scatterings around the world, but I think there's very few that will come up with something like the first philosophy and say,
Sure.
This is our backbone, our philosophy of what we do. And if you don't like it, I'm very clear about how I feel. We don't censor people from coming into these communities, but if you want to be around like-minded people that hang out and talk about the kinds of things that we talk about, it's kind of self-controlling.
Yeah,
right?
they're going to self-select, for sure.
Exactly. So I'm hoping you're excited about being there. And
very much so. I think that it's going to be very rare to find. Yes, there might be other freedom communities who are, have the right direction, but they don't have the experience that you have. 2 decades of building. They don't have, you've taken a company like right up to the IPO stage, right? Raising capital. And, these types of projects, the infrastructure, they cost money, so you can't just go in and just wing it. Like, you need to have a bit of capital behind you, and you need to know what you're doing. And then from my side, with a large audience, with 2-3 million people a year who read or listen to my work, we have a large voice, large reach. So together on a project like this, our success is much higher than I think in any other community that you'll ever find. Like, I would absolutely argue that point.
Yeah, and as we expand too, I really like the idea of the Veritas Village family that we're creating, right? Like, eventually there'll be one in Argentina, and there'll be one in Ecuador, and one in Mexico or Costa Rica. And if you are an owner or resident in one of the existing Veritas villages, you can go there and you'll get, the perks of discounts at the restaurant and all that sorts of things, and maybe some, house exchange and stuff like that. So to me, it's going to be really cool in the future too, when we can go to multiple different communities that have the same like-mindedness, and you can plop yourself down there for a month and go, hey, these guys are a lot like me, and it's fun to hang out with, and I don't have to worry about what I say and getting censored and canceled. So it's really creating a whole ecosystem of this kind of community. So I'm really excited, and I really appreciate, you talking about it and helping out and making it happen, being on the board, being an investor in the company. It's all great. So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you being on the show here too.
Pleasure's all mine, and happy to come back at any time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You'll be back.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.